The dining table was set for 6, though only one chair was occupied. Candles flickered weakly against the untouched plates. A chocolate ganache cake sat in the center, Ava's favorite, or at least, it used to be. I had ordered it anyway, clinging to habit. A small card on the cake read, "Happy birthday, Mom." I had written it myself. I checked the clock, 7:03 p.m. She was supposed to be here by 6. My phone buzzed. For a moment, hope surged. Maybe she was parking. Maybe she brought flowers. I opened the message. "Hey Mom. Linda made a surprise dinner for you at Dad's place. Thought it'd be easier to do it all together. Hope you don't mind. No, happy birthday. No, I love you." Just an emoji and a casual dismissal, as if I were a side character in my own life. I stared at the words, my thumb hovering over the reply. But I put the phone down. I'd been sidelined long enough. She didn't know what I'd spent the last 25 years building. She didn't know that tonight, her choice had unlocked something irreversible. Let them eat cake. I had a legacy to rewrite. It didn't happen all at once. That's the cruel part. If it had been sudden, I might have prepared. But instead, Ava's loyalty drifted away like smoke, invisible at first, until I realized I was choking on it. It started the day she said, "Linda's actually kind of fun, you know." I smiled, of course. What was I supposed to say? Ava was 16 then. Still mine, I thought. Then came the skipped weekends. The holidays, too complicated to coordinate. The school events, where she stood beside her father and his new wife, not even glancing at me in the crowd. Linda knew exactly how to pull her in, designer gifts, spa days, a well-timed shoulder to cry on during teenage heartbreaks. And I, the quiet mother who stayed up filling FAFSA forms and sewing hems on prom dresses, became background noise. The birthday that broke me wasn't just about a missed dinner. It was a final verdict. I had raised my daughter alone after the divorce, scraped, saved, sacrificed. I went without vacations, without new clothes, without complaints. I had done the math on groceries so she could have piano lessons. I had worked a second job tutoring ESL students so she wouldn't have to worry about college. And yet, on the one day I thought might still matter, she chose the woman who had arrived halfway through the story, smiled pretty, and claimed my seat. The silence of that evening wasn't peaceful. It was deafening. I had never felt more invisible. Or more resolved. Because love like mine doesn't disappear. It transforms. They always assumed I was just soft. Predictable. The kind of woman who folds sweaters before donating them, who clips coupons, who apologizes too quickly. Ava once joked that I was the most wholesome person on earth. But I had learned early in life that safety doesn't come from being loud, it comes from being prepared. No one knew that in between raising Ava, I had been studying financial literacy like a second language. That I invested modest inheritances in mutual funds instead of handbags. That I'd chosen a fixer-upper home, not just for its charm, but because I knew the property value would triple once the city finished the new highway exit. I never said anything when my ex laughed at my DIY budgeting spreadsheets. But I noticed he started copying my grocery hacks after the divorce. By the time Ava turned 25, I had amassed over $1 million, every penny quietly earned, carefully grown, and placed into a trust in her name. I never told her. I wanted it to be a surprise, something she'd inherit one day as proof of everything I never said out loud. But now it was more than just a gift. It was leverage. That trust, built from silent discipline and relentless love, had been sitting in a sealed envelope in my lawyer's office for 4 years. And after that birthday betrayal, I made one phone call. Just one. "I need to change the terms," I said. Because if Ava had truly forgotten who I was, then she would have to remember me, not with words, but with action. I didn't expect her to come crawling back overnight. No. Ava had inherited something else from me, besides her eye-shape, pride. Weeks passed in silence. Then, one afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find her standing there, not with flowers, not with an apology, but with a clipboard. Her eyes were guarded, businesslike. "Hi, Mom. So, I got into Arden Hill. For grad school. You probably heard." I nodded. Of course I'd heard. She'd plastered the acceptance letter all over social media. What she hadn't mentioned was the tuition. "I was wondering," she said carefully, "if you'd be willing to help with the cost. Just a loan. I'll pay it back, I promise." And just like that, the scales tipped. I invited her in, offered her tea, listened to her talk about Linda's generous support, drying up once the scholarship didn't come through. I nodded sympathetically while she danced around the real issue: she needed me. And I was calm, gentle, almost grandmotherly, like always. Then I slid the envelope across the table. Inside, the terms of the trust. Ava's smile faded as she read: "To access the full inheritance, the beneficiary must deliver a speech at the upcoming memorial for Margaret Lee, her grandmother, in front of all attending family and friends. The speech must include 1. A sincere public acknowledgement of the sacrifices her mother made to raise her, and 2. A previously unrevealed truth about her mother's actions on her behalf. No shortcuts. No email. No delegation. She would have to stand in front of the same family, who had watched her drift away from me, and reclaim her place by my side. Honestly. Publicly. Vulnerably." Her face turned pale. "You're joking." "I'm not," I replied softly. "The money's real. So is the requirement." That was when I saw it, not just shock, but fear. Because she realized this wasn't just about tuition anymore. It was about integrity, public memory, and her own legacy. I didn't gloat. I didn't post cryptic quotes online or hint at revenge. That wasn't my way. My way was simpler: create conditions so precise, so undeniable, that Ava would have to face a mirror she'd spent years avoiding. The memorial for my mother, Ava's grandmother, was the perfect setting. Margaret Lee was beloved in our family. Dignified. Old-fashioned. Her memorial would be well attended by everyone who had watched Ava grow up: uncles, cousins, childhood friends, even some of the teachers from her old school. The family grapevine buzzed weeks in advance. People were coming in from 4 states. I knew Ava couldn't fake her way through it. The moment she opened her mouth, they'd all know whether she meant it. And that was the point. She called me 4 days before the memorial. "What if I wrote something, and you read it for me?" "No," I replied. "The condition is presence. Voice. Truth. I won't do it for you." 3 days before, she sent a carefully worded message asking if Linda could accompany her to the service. "Of course," I responded. "But only you can speak." 2 days before, silence. The night before, I saw her car parked down the street from my house. She never knocked. Just sat there. Then drove off. Even that small gesture made my heart twist. But I reminded myself, this wasn't about punishment. It was about remembering who we are. About returning a daughter to herself, not through guilt, but through earned grace. What Ava didn't know was that the trust included a second clause, locked behind my signature. One I hadn't shared yet. One that only activated if she fulfilled the first on her own, not out of desperation, but choice. The memorial hall was quiet, but full, almost reverent. My mother would have liked that. Lace runners on the tables, a slideshow of faded family photos looping in the corner, the smell of her favorite rosy water perfume lingering in the air. I stood near the back, letting others mingle and speak. This wasn't my moment. I'd already had my turn when I wrote the eulogy and arranged the event. I wasn't there to shine. I was there to watch. And then Ava walked in. She wore a simple black dress. No designer labels. No Linda at her side. Her face looked pale, but resolute. For a brief second, our eyes met, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years: humility. When the host called her name, there was a soft stir in the room. Some raised brows. Whispers. People remembered her as the daughter who hadn't shown up at Christmas. The one whose Instagram feed glowed with filtered brunches and vacations, but never included her mother. She stepped up to the microphone. Her hands trembled. She unfolded a single sheet of paper, then folded it again, and set it aside. She spoke without notes. I came here thinking I'd read a safe speech about my grandmother. But that would be dishonest. And I think Grandma Margaret deserved better than dishonesty. A hush fell. When I was younger, I used to think strength looked like loud success. Fancy clothes. Being chosen. I thought my stepmother was strong because she was confident, commanding. But I misunderstood what real strength was. She paused, swallowing hard. My mother raised me by herself. I don't remember ever seeing her cry. But I remember the nights she stayed up sewing my Halloween costumes, and the mornings she left the house with wet hair, because she always made sure I got breakfast first. I never asked where my college fund came from. I never asked how she paid the mortgage. I just assumed it was all fine. It wasn't. She worked harder than anyone I've ever met. And I dismissed her. A few guests looked down. A tissue passed quietly across a row. I'm not just here to honor my grandmother today. I'm here to say this out loud, in front of all of you, because it matters. My mother sacrificed more than I ever thanked her for. She taught me what quiet power looks like. And she deserves to be seen. Silence. Then, applause. Real. Long. Earned. I felt my chest ache, the kind of ache that comes when something long broken finally resets into place. Ava stepped down. Her eyes searched the room for me. When she found me, I gave a small nod. Nothing theatrical. Just truth returning to truth. She didn't know it yet, but she'd just unlocked the second clause of the trust. After the service, I stayed behind while guests filtered out. Hugs, polite words, even a few tearful compliments came my way, but I was watching only one person. Ava lingered near the photo display. She touched the edge of a frame like it was a tether, something to keep her grounded. I walked up quietly. She turned, eyes red but calm. Did I do it right? She asked, voice small. You did it honestly, I said. That matters more. She hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I still wrote the speech. I didn't want to hide behind it. I took the paper and smiled. Keep it. It's yours. You earned your voice today. She nodded. Her shoulders loosened. There was still a wall between us. Years of absence and misunderstanding don't vanish in a day, but the first crack had opened. A week later, she received the trust documents in the mail. But what she hadn't expected was the addendum, the second clause I had never told her about. Upon fulfillment of the first condition, a second account shall be released, not for tuition or personal use, but for stewardship. The beneficiary shall become co-manager of a foundation, seeded with $250,000, whose mission is to provide single mothers with financial literacy education and emergency grants. She called me immediately. What is this? It's the part of the legacy you didn't know you wanted, I said. You spoke like someone ready to lead with integrity. I want to see if that's true. There was a long pause. Then, softly, you trust me with this. I trust who you became when no one else was telling you what to be. Publicly, Ava's speech began to circulate through the family. An aunt shared a clip, a cousin reposted it. People who had judged me for not being fun enough suddenly remembered how often I babysat their children, or bailed them out of tight months. The whispers changed, the respect returned, not because I demanded it, but because I had lived in a way that couldn't be erased. Even Linda, the glossy stepmother with her curated life, reached out with a strained text, beautiful words from Ava. You must be proud. I didn't respond. Some silences are earned, too, Ava, and I don't pretend the past didn't happen. But we speak more now, honestly. She sits with me at dinners. She asks questions. She listens. The trust didn't buy that. Her choices did. And on my next birthday, she showed up, early. No emoji. No excuses. Just a hug, a handwritten card, and a chocolate ganache cake with one candle. Make a wish, she said. But I already had. And this time, it came true.